think about your absolute best friend for a second.
Yeah.
You listening right now, just picture them. Like the person you would call at 2 in the morning if your life was just completely falling apart.
Yeah. That one specific person.
Exactly. Now, what if I told you that the only reason you two are actually close isn't because of some magical predestined soulmate connection? It's literally just because their desk happened to be 15 feet away from yours back in, like, 2018.
I mean, it completely shatters the whole illusion we have about human bonding, right? We really love to romanticize the origins of our relationships.
Well, we treat it like a total celestial event. You walk into a crowded room, you lock eyes with someone, and boom, this social lightning bolt of chemistry just strikes.
Yeah, and we just wait for it to happen. We assume that finding a true connection is entirely a matter of luck or, destiny.
But today, we are doing a deep dive into this massive stack of sociological and psychological research. And, well, we're basically dismantling that romantic myth. Because the data shows us a social landscape that's driven by cold, hard structure.
Which, honestly, is actually incredibly empowering when you really look at the mechanisms.
It really is.
Because the research proves that friendship is not a happy accident. It is a highly predictable, slow-burn process. It's driven by very specific environmental and psychological factors.
And when you finally understand the formula, you can stop just waiting for the universe to magically deliver a best friend to your doorstep.
Exactly.
And, that is exactly our mission for you today. If you're listening to this deep dive, you have probably felt that deep, sometimes super isolating frustration of trying to make friends as an adult.
Oh, everyone feels it. It's so universal.
It really is. So we want to give you the exact blueprint of this emotional infrastructure. That way you can stop being just a passive recipient of luck.
Right, and become an intentional architect of your social life.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the very first ingredient required to spark a bond is, honestly, shockingly unromantic. I mean, it all starts with geography.
Yeah, so the scientific term for it is propinquity, which, is really just a very academic way of saying physical proximity.
Propinquity. That is a great word.
It's a great word, but the data reveals this profound irony about our modern lives. Even in this era of, borderless digital connection.
Where you can FaceTime someone in Tokyo in 2 seconds.
Exactly. Even with all that, your absolute most likely best friend is still the person who lives down the hall from you. Or, the colleague who sits at the next desk over. Physical nearness is still the ultimate predictor of social connection.
Oh, I read that in the sources and immediately thought about the guy I always see at my gym.
Oh, yeah. The gym is a perfect example.
Right. Like day 1, you completely ignore each other. Day 10, you give that mutual sort of tight-lipped nod of acknowledgement.
The universal nod.
Yes. And then by day 30, you're casually spotting each other on the bench press. We haven't even exchanged names. But the tension is completely gone. And the research calls this the mere exposure effect.
Right. That gym scenario is literally the perfect illustration of how our brains are fundamentally wired. Because evolutionarily speaking, anything unfamiliar is a potential threat.
Your amygdala is just on high alert.
Exactly. But repeated, unplanned, low-stakes contact with a person naturally rewires your brain. It starts to interpret their face as safe.
Even though you aren't doing any, heavy conversational lifting at all.
None. You're just existing in the same space repeatedly. Right. And every time you do, it lowers what the research actually calls sociological friction.
Sociological friction. It's kind of like hearing a new pop song on the radio.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. The first time it comes on, you might genuinely dislike it. It's jarring. You don't know the beat.
You want to change the station.
Exactly.
Right.
But by the 10th time it plays on your morning commute, you're tapping the steering wheel.
And by the 20th time, you are fully singing along.
Fully belting it out. Because familiarity breeds liking, not contempt.
And that evolutionary safety net is just crucial. The magic of human connection isn't found in a high-pressure first meeting.
Like a blind date or one of those forced networking events.
The absolute worst, where everyone is just desperately trying to impress each other.
Right.
True baseline comfort, it happens at the 5th or the 10th or the 20th casual encounter. That is when the barrier to entry finally drops. Interaction feels safe rather than effortful.
So, okay, proximity forces us into the same room, and then the mere exposure effect makes us feel safe. But to actually start talking,
Mm.
we need some sort of initial social glue.
Yeah, you need a hook.
And the stack of research points to this concept called homophily.
Yeah.
It's basically the whole birds of a feather mechanism. We instinctively gravitate toward people who mirror our core values, our beliefs, and, our interests.
Because it provides an immediate baseline of shared reality. But what's really interesting is that the sources highlight how homophily is strongly tied to life stages too.
Oh, that part was fascinating.
Yeah.
If you and your neighbor are both navigating the absolute chaos of having a newborn baby,
Or you're both just starting out in these grueling entry-level corporate jobs.
right, you have this immediate, deep empathy. You don't have to explain the context of your exhaustion to them. It gives you a shared language right off the bat.
And shared context is a massive shortcut. So proximity gets you in the room, mere exposure lowers your defenses, and homophily gives you something to nod your heads about.
But those elements alone just leave you in the realm of friendly acquaintances.
Exactly. You have a great chat by the office coffee machine, but you still aren't going to their house for dinner.
And that's the exact wall I think so many adults hit.
Mhm.
We get into the same orbit as someone we genuinely like, but moving from the acquaintance zone into a real lasting friendship, it just seems impossible.
It's tough. And according to the research, crossing that threshold requires the heaviest investment of all. It requires an extraordinary amount of time. Researcher Robin Dunbar has done this incredible work quantifying human social networks. And his findings completely shatter that myth of the instant vibe.
Yeah, totally.
Dunbar's metric basically suggests that friendship isn't about immediate vibes at all. It's a direct mathematical function of accumulated hours.
Let's talk about the actual data there, because honestly, those numbers blew my mind.
Mm.
Like, he actually calculated the specific hour requirements.
He did. So Dunbar's data shows that it takes roughly 50 hours of face-to-face interaction just to move from an acquaintance to a casual friend.
50 hours, wow.
Yeah, and then it takes about 90 hours to become real friends. And get this, you need upwards of 200 hours to become close friends.
200 hours. I mean, think about
Yeah.
that in the context of adult scheduling. We have, maybe one coffee date for 45 minutes? Maybe once a month if we're incredibly lucky.
Right, which means it would take...
It's over 260 coffees to become a close friend. That's literally 22 years. It perfectly explains why adults are constantly complaining that making friends is just impossible.
Yeah, we all have those potential connections that just wither and die in that, oh, we should totally hang out sometime phase.
Because we refuse to commit to the logistics.
Exactly. Adults constantly mistake a lack of time investment for a lack of chemistry. We assume that if we were really meant to be friends, the connection would just magically sustain itself effortlessly.
But the brutal truth is we just don't prioritize the hours.
We don't.
We want the 200-hour reward with a 45-minute investment. But I want to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
Are you saying we could literally schedule our way into a deep friendship?
Yeah.
Like if I just take a random coworker and trap them in an elevator with me for 200 hours, we automatically become best friends, even without a spark.
Well, not quite. Time is the currency, but you have to spend that currency correctly. It's about building a positive reinforcement loop of reciprocal effort.
Okay, reciprocal effort.
The research is very clear that unequal effort kills potential friendships. If you are logging hours, but the emotional and logistical effort is entirely one-sided.
Like you're always the one texting, always the one suggesting plans.
Right. If it's just you, the connection will naturally fade. Both sides have to mutually initiate. Furthermore, consistency completely trumps intensity.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning you don't need to plan grand, flashy weekend getaways to build a 200-hour friendship. Small, reliable actions over time move the needle much faster.
Like just remembering to text someone back.
Yes, or asking how a difficult meeting went, or just showing up predictably to a weekly walk. Predictability builds trust.
Okay, so we are logging our 50 hours, we're showing up consistently, we're both putting in the effort, but we can't just talk about the weather or, like, the traffic for 50 hours and expect to be invited to their wedding.
Right, definitely not. At some point, the actual nature of the conversation has to change.
It has to go deeper.
Exactly. And psychologists call this progression social penetration theory. For a really long time, the dominant metaphor for this was peeling an onion.
Oh, right, like moving from the outer superficial layers to the inner vulnerable layers.
But a much better way to visualize it, according to some of the research, is like navigating a video game map.
I like that. How does the map work?
Well, the outer map is the safe zone. This is where everyone starts. You talk about commutes, pop culture, sports, the weather. It requires zero emotional risk to wander around this area.
So it's easy.
Super easy. But to deepen the relationship, you have to unlock the inner rooms of the map, the areas that hold your political views, your personal philosophies, and eventually the deepest room, your fears, your secret ambitions, your failures, the messy stuff.
But you can't just walk into those inner rooms.
No, you need a key.
And the key, according to the sources, is something called reciprocal liking. The certainty of being liked is this magical psychological switch.
It really is.
Once you know the other person values your company maybe they give you a genuine compliment, or they just actively, intensely listen to a mundane story you're telling, your social anxiety just evaporates.
Because the fear of rejection is the primary barrier to vulnerability.
Right. And when reciprocal liking removes that fear, you suddenly feel brave enough to take a risk and open one of those inner doors.
You feel safe enough to escalate the disclosure.
It reminds me of like a really high-stakes social poker game.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, someone has to be the first one to push their chips into the center of the table, right? By sharing something real.
Something a little embarrassing, maybe, or insecure.
Exactly. And it's honestly terrifying because you have no idea how they'll react. Are they going to judge you?
You're risking a lot.
But when the other person doesn't fold, when they respond with empathy instead of judgment, or they say, oh my gosh, I feel the exact same way, it creates this ultimate turning point in the relationship.
That really does.
It's that profound realization of, wow, I just showed you the messy part of myself, and you didn't run away.
And that shared empathy is basically the jackpot. But, pacing in this poker game is absolutely everything. The research really emphasizes that vulnerability must be mutually paced.
So you can't just go all in on the first hand.
Definitely not. If you dump all your chips on the table at once and overshare your deepest childhood traumas within the first hour of meeting someone, it feels profoundly unsafe.
It's the classic trauma dump. It completely violates the social contract.
Exactly. It's overwhelming for the other person and they will naturally back away. But on the flip side, if you never bet any chips,
If you share too little.
right, if you share too little, you maintain this sterile, polite distance forever. You are trapped in the outer safe zone of the map. The escalation of vulnerability has to be a gradual back and forth dance. I share a little, you validate it, and you share a little back.
But, staring across a table at a coffee shop, trying to expertly pace a vulnerability poker game, that sounds honestly exhausting.
It can be. It basically feels like an interrogation.
The eye contact alone is super intense, and the sources actually offer a brilliant solution to this exact problem. Because it turns out, the fastest way to bypass all that awkwardness of small talk and really accelerate trust, it isn't about sitting face-to-face at all.
No, not at all. It's about what sociologists call embodied collaboration.
Right.
This is the concept of bonding side by side rather than face to face. And to successfully execute this, you really need a third thing.
Like a shared focus.
Precisely. When you are sitting across from someone at dinner, the focus of the interaction is literally each other. If the conversation lulls, the pressure just spikes.
It's so uncomfortable.
But when you introduce a third thing, like a broken down car you're trying to fix, or a complex project at work, or even just a brutal hiking trail, you are no longer looking at each other. You are both looking at the problem.
The pressure just drops completely. You aren't judging each other anymore. You're collectively judging the obstacle in front of you.
And that neurological shift is massive. It creates a natural, instinctual alliance. This mechanism explains why the data consistently shows that the most unbreakable friendships are forged in high-stakes environments.
Like this shared exhaustion of a tech startup trying to launch a product.
Or the intense life-or-death reliance within a military unit.
Or even something as mundane as just surviving a disastrous, rain-soaked camping trip together.
Yes. Working through a difficult situation side by side creates a private world. You build a microhistory of inside jokes, shared grievances, and mutual victories that outsiders simply cannot access.
And that shared struggle acts as the ultimate social glue. It bypasses the need for polite small talk and forces authentic reaction.
It really does.
This actually brings up an incredible insight from the research about how we handle negative moments in general.
Oh, this part is so fascinating.
Right. The sources introduce a concept called social exchange theory. And it looks at relationships through the lens of an internal ROI, like a return on investment.
Yes. Basically, your brain is subconsciously running this continuous calculation. It's asking, do I leave this person's presence feeling energized and supported?
Or do I leave feeling completely drained and anxious?
Right. It's a ruthless, instinctual calculation we all make to protect our emotional energy.
So applying that ROI calculation, is it actually more important to show up when a friend's life is falling apart? Like capitalizing on the lows rather than showing up to their birthday party and celebrating the highs?
Yes, definitely.
Because we always think about friendship as, fun, happy times.
We do, but the psychology points firmly to the lows. The research refers to this as capitalizing on the negative.
Capitalizing on the negative, that sounds almost backward.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but showing up during a friend's moment of severe stress when their life is genuinely messy and inconvenient, it creates a profound psychological anchor.
An anchor of safety and loyalty, right?
Exactly, because it's easy to show up for the fun stuff. Celebrating a birthday party requires very little emotional investment. It's pleasant, but it's superficial.
You just bring a gift and have some cake.
Right. But supporting someone through a crisis like a breakup, a job loss, or a family illness, that translates your casual involvement into reliable companionship.
It physically proves to their amygdala that you aren't just a fair weather associate.
Yes, you become a safe harbor. Navigating the lows together provides a much higher ROI in terms of deep trust than just, cheering them on during the highs.
So when you look at the whole picture, you combine the initial physical proximity, the massive time investment of 200 hours, that mutual, carefully paced vulnerability, and then the crucible of shared struggles. You don't just get a buddy to watch a basketball game with.
No, you don't.
You achieve the absolute rarest and highest form of human connection.
Philosophers actually have a specific term for this ultimate tier of connection. They call them friendships of virtue.
I love that phrasing. Friendships of virtue. What actually elevates it above just a regular friendship, though?
Well, it moves entirely beyond utility or just having fun together. A friendship of virtue is a mutual commitment to growth.
Wow.
Yeah. You are choosing to spend your time with someone because you deeply respect their underlying character, and they actively challenge you to be a better version of yourself.
They aren't just concerned with keeping you entertained on a Friday night.
No, they're fundamentally invested in your long-term excellence. They see all your flaws, they know all the messy rooms of your video game map, but they choose to champion the person you are striving to become.
And what's brilliant is that the sources don't just leave this as some abstract, unachievable philosophical ideal. They provide some really fascinating cultural examples. It illustrates how certain societies actually engineer this exact blueprint into their daily lives naturally.
Right? They don't leave it up to chance. They utilize structural enforcement. Basically, the community does the heavy lifting for the individual.
Yes. Like the examples from Indonesia in the research are so clarifying. They have these community gatherings called Arizon, which operate sort of like social microfinance groups where neighbors pool money.
Yeah, or they have Pengajian, which are weekly religious study circles.
Right. But my absolute favorite is simply the culture of the local warung, the neighborhood food stall.
Oh, the warung is literally a masterclass in social architecture.
Exactly. Because it's not just a place to buy noodles. It structurally enforces proximity, shared experiences, and frequent, unplanned contact. I mean, the warung is usually right on your way home. Your neighbors are already sitting there.
You don't have to send a calendar invite.
No, you don't have to text, hey, are you free on Thursday for exactly 45 minutes? You just sit down and exist in the space together. It builds the mere exposure effect and the time tax right into your daily routine.
It basically solves the Dunbar math problem for you automatically. If you spend an hour at the warung every few days, you hit your 200 hours without ever feeling like you had to, schedule a friendship.
Okay. But for you listening to this deep dive, you might be thinking, well, that's great, but I don't live in a tight-knit Indonesian village with a warung on the corner. I live in a sprawling suburb or a high-rise apartment building where literally no one makes eye contact.
Right, a very common modern problem.
So what is the modern Western equivalent for us?
The modern equivalent is honestly any structure that completely removes the burden of scheduling. It's an environment where the time tax is basically paid automatically by your routine.
So like a Thursday night bowling league.
Exactly. It could be showing up to the local dog park at exactly 7 a.m. every single morning. It's a weekly volunteer shift at an animal shelter, or maybe a run club that always meets at the same brewery afterward.
It's the commitment to a routine space. Because if you go to the dog park at a different time every day, you just meet random strangers. But if you go at 7 a.m. every single day, you see the exact same sleep-deprived people. You share the third thing of watching your dogs play, which completely removes the awkwardness. And your 50 hours, your 90 hours, the friction just disappears.
And that is the ultimate takeaway here. The scientific formula, it isn't magic. It is proximity, driven by repetition, accelerated by shared experience, solidified by trust, and compounded by time.
It's a formula.
Yes. When you align those specific environmental and psychological elements, the spark follows the structure almost automatically. The chemistry is really just a byproduct of the architecture.
It is incredibly empowering to look at it that way. High-quality friendships are rare, and the sources openly acknowledge that. They're rare because these required conditions are super fragile, and they take real, sustained effort to maintain in a busy adult life. But armed with this blueprint, you don't have to sit around passively waiting for lightning to strike. You don't have to hope the universe drops a best friend right in your lap. You can intentionally build the structures in your own life to create the storm. You can be the architect of your own community.
But stepping back and analyzing this entire stack of research, this raises a really important and frankly deeply concerning question for our future.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we've just established through decades of data that human bonding absolutely requires physical propinquity. It requires that repeated flesh and blood physical proximity.
Right.
It requires embodied side-by-side collaboration to build trust and effectively pay the time tax. So how in the world will we survive the massive modern shift toward remote work and digital-first lifestyles?
Oh, wow. That is a huge question.
Right, because if the physical office floor and the shared break room coffee machine and the daily neighborhood commute just permanently disappear, how must we radically redesign our future cities and our daily routines?
To force those accidental physical collisions our brains so desperately need.
Exactly, because if we don't figure out a new architecture for this digital age, how do we avoid a catastrophic loneliness epidemic?
That is such a profound and vital question for us all to ponder and figure out, because as we've learned today, that celestial event of friendship is very, very real. But it absolutely needs a physical place to land.